Nobody in the room knew what was coming. Not his speechwriters, not his cabinet, not the vice president sitting yards away. It is March 31st, 1968. Lyndon Johnson is live on national television, delivering what his staff believes is a Vietnam address, an update on the war, an appeal for unity, the familiar language of a president holding a difficult line. But Johnson has something in his jacket pocket that was not in the briefing notes. A single page, handwritten revisions, words he has been carrying for weeks, folding and unfolding, reading alone at night, putting back without showing anyone. In 30 seconds, he will end his presidency with them. He reaches the final section of the speech. His voice does not change. His expression does not change. He reads the words as if he had always planned to say them. He will not seek and will not accept his party's nomination for another term. The room goes silent. The most powerful man in the world had just decided, alone, in secret, to stop. But that page almost stayed in his pocket. Lyndon Johnson was not supposed to be a great president. He was a tactician, a deal-maker, a man who had spent 30 years mastering the machinery of the Senate. He was crude, relentless, and completely without illusion about how power worked. And yet, in his first years in office, he had done something remarkable. The Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, Medicare, Medicaid, federal education funding, the most ambitious domestic legislation since Roosevelt, pushed through Congress by a man who knew exactly which arm to twist and when. He called it the Great Society. Then Vietnam swallowed it whole. Johnson had inherited the war from Kennedy, a small American advisory presence, a manageable commitment, a problem that could be contained. He told himself he would not be the president who lost Southeast Asia to communism. He told himself escalation would work. He told himself the military briefings were accurate. They were not. By 1968, more than 500,000 American troops were in Vietnam. 50,000 would never come home. And the Tet Offensive, a massive coordinated attack across South Vietnam in January of that year, had proved that the enemy was not close to defeat. The war Johnson had promised to win was a war he could not explain anymore. His approval rating had collapsed. Senator Eugene McCarthy, running on an anti-war platform, nearly beat him in the New Hampshire primary. Robert Kennedy entered the race days later. Johnson was not losing to opponents. He was losing to the weight of his own decisions. On the night of March 31st, he added a passage to his televised address that no one on his staff had seen coming. He was done. The withdrawal statement was written in secret. Johnson had been carrying it for weeks, revising it, reconsidering it, folding it into his jacket pocket before speeches, and then leaving it there. His wife knew. A handful of advisors suspected. But until the words were spoken, live on national television, nothing was certain. And the words almost weren't spoken. Earlier drafts of the March 31st address contained no withdrawal. They were Vietnam speeches, updates on the war, appeals for unity, the familiar language of a president defending an undefendable position. The withdrawal passage was added at the last moment. One decision. One man. One night. What if he had left it out? What if Lyndon Johnson had folded the withdrawal statement back into his jacket, finished the speech as written, and stayed in the race? Johnson announces he will seek re-election. McCarthy and Kennedy are already in the race. The Democratic primary becomes a three-way war. Johnson has the institutional power, the party machinery, the endorsements, the incumbency. But he is deeply wounded, and both challengers know it. Then, in June, Robert Kennedy is assassinated in Los Angeles. This happens regardless. The bullet does not care who is in the race. McCarthy is left as the anti-war alternative. Johnson defeats him at the convention in Chicago, the same convention that, in our timeline, erupted in street violence as police clashed with protesters outside. In this version, Johnson wins the nomination, but the images from Chicago are the same. The tear gas, the batons, the chaos broadcast live into American living rooms. He enters the general election fractured and exhausted. His opponent is Richard Nixon. Nixon, in our timeline, won by less than 1 percentage point. He ran against Hubert Humphrey, a loyal vice president too closely tied to Johnson's war to fully distance himself from it. Against Johnson himself, the dynamic shifts. Nixon can no longer run simply against the war. He is running against the man who built it. Johnson, unlike Humphrey, can fight back, not by defending Vietnam, but by attacking Nixon's credibility, his history, his fitness. Johnson had spent 30 years in Washington. He knew where the bodies were buried. The election of 1968 becomes the ugliest campaign in modern American history. Johnson wins, narrowly, bitterly, with no mandate and a country that has not forgiven him. The consequences unspool slowly. Vietnam does not end. Johnson cannot withdraw without admitting that 50,000 men died for a mistake he made. He escalates cautiously, negotiates quietly, looks for an exit that does not humiliate him. The war extends into 1970, 1971, perhaps beyond. The protest movement does not fade. It intensifies. The generation that would have exhausted itself against Nixon now has 4 more years of Johnson to rage against. Nixon does not become president in 1969. Watergate never happens. The tapes are never made. The Saturday Night Massacre, the resignation, the pardon, none of it occurs. The wound that Watergate cut into American institutional trust, the cynicism, the assumption of corruption at the center of power, is delayed, or takes a different form entirely. Gerald Ford is never president. The conservative movement that Reagan would build partly on the ruins of Watergate finds different material, different grievances, a different timeline. And Johnson himself? He governs a country that does not want him. He is re-elected, but not restored. The Great Society programs he fought for begin to erode under the pressure of war, spending, inflation, and a Democratic Party tearing itself apart. He finishes his second full term in 1973. He dies the same year, as he did in our timeline, January 22, 1973, at his Texas ranch. Heart failure. He never sees the war end. We remember Johnson's withdrawal as an act of self-awareness, a powerful man recognizing that he had become the obstacle, stepping aside so the country could find a way through. There is something almost noble in that reading, but the other interpretation is harder and perhaps more honest. Johnson did not leave because he had found peace with his failures. He left because staying had become unbearable. The withdrawal was not wisdom. It was exhaustion wearing the mask of wisdom. And in the version where he stays, where he finds one more reserve of will and refuses to let go, the country does not get a resolution. It gets 4 more years of a man fighting a war he cannot win, defending decisions he cannot justify, governing a nation that has stopped believing him. The difference between the man who walked away and the man who stayed was a single page of a speech, folded and unfolded in a jacket pocket for weeks. History did not turn on a battle or a treaty. It turned on whether a tired man reached into his pocket. He did. Once. And that was enough to change everything that came after.